down, and we are having a fantastic time. But my friends, it is at the pinnacle. We are ready to see the wizard. Who is ready for that? We got our dog, we got our tin man, we got our crews, we got our brains, but we have the biggest brain coming to us right now. I am so pleased to be able to introduce, after just a moment. Is everybody ready? Give me a drum roll. We're going to start off with a video and introduce Mr. Kevin Harrington.
With over 500 products launched and generating over $5 billion in product sales in over 100 countries, Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, as seen on TV pioneer, and original shark on the TV show Shark Tank. Kevin creates massive brands by combining great products with superstar talent like Kim Kardashian, 50 Cent, Kathy and Paris Hilton, CeeLo Green, George Foreman, Montel Williams, Jack LaLanne, Flo Rida, Hulk Hogan, Billy Mays, and Tony Little.
My brand now is worth over $3 billion. If you even have an idea, you'd want to go to Kevin Harrington.
Kevin has been featured on 2020, CNN, Fox Business, Bloomberg, Jim Cramer's The Street, MTV, Good Morning America, the CBS Morning News, The Today Show, The View, and The Daily Double on Jeopardy.
Now the last probe, back to the Shark Tank. I'm Kevin Harrington.
An entrepreneur for over 40 years, Kevin has built 20 businesses to over $100 million each. That's why he's the original shark from Shark Tank, Kevin Harrington. Let's give Kevin a warm welcome.
How many recognize that Shark Tank music? All right, yes. How many entrepreneurs in the room? Show of hands. Almost everybody. This is exactly the sweet spot of the crowd. I love coming to meet entrepreneurs. Let's all give ourselves a round of applause for being an entrepreneur. Thank you. Now, I'm going to share a couple things. First, people ask me about Shark Tank, so maybe I'll tell a couple Shark Tank stories first, and then we'll get into some meat. But everyone always asks me about Mr. Wonderful, right? And so, do you know why he calls himself Mr. Wonderful? Because nobody else will. he thinks so, right? He's actually not such a bad guy. Do you know that he has his own wine that he sells on QVC? Yeah. And he drinks it pretty good, too, okay? He's a funny guy, actually. But I like to also talk about Mark Burnett, the guy that created Shark Tank. It was a show format that came out of Japan, and it was called Dragon's Den, owned by Sony. But then when they opened it in England, in Canada, but when it came to the United States, Mark Burnett said, I don't want to call it a dragon anything. That's like for kids. So Shark Tank was a great name. And my wife said, you know, it was funny because I got a tap on the shoulder once. I was at a trade show, and a woman that was working for Mark Burnett said, Mark Burnett sent me out to trade shows to find potential sharks for the show. And I said, what are you talking about? Sharks for what show? She said, oh, well, Mark Burnett's doing a new show called Shark Tank, and he wanted me to come out and ask the operators of all these different trade shows, who are the people that we should consider to have on Shark Tank as sharks? So, and I said, well, can you tell me what it is? And she said, no, but Mark Burnett has to tell you that. But he wants to meet you and talk to you. So I said, okay, I'd love to do that. So I got him with my wife. I said, hey, Mark Burnett, the producer of great television shows, wants me to come out, meet with him, talk about a new show that he's doing called Shark Tank. And she said, well, what's it all about? And I said, well, they may tell me. She said, you idiot. She said, don't you think about it. What do they do to those people on that Survivor show? And what are they going to do to you on Shark Tank? Okay. And I'm like, oh my God, what? It doesn't sound like a business show, right? And so I went out and met with Mark, and when I found out it was a show where people were going to come out, they had 3 minutes to pitch, and I had 3 minutes to make up my mind whether I was going to invest. I actually said to Mark Burnett, if that's what you call a shark, then I've been a shark for 40 years. He said, what do you mean? I said, I go to the houseware show, the hardware show, the fitness show, the beauty show. Yesterday, I was in Orlando, Florida at the PGA Golf Show. What was I doing? The Golf Pitch Challenge. Right on the floor of the PGA show in conjunction with the PGA, taking pitches myself, 7 judges. We had to bring a few, one from the PGA, and David Ledbetter, one of the greatest golf trainers in the world. And we had an awesome event. We invested in a couple projects, and that's really what I love doing. So I love traveling the world, meeting with entrepreneurs, and sharing my story. And I'm going to get to that in just a second. Just one more story about sharks, because we all would hang out quite a bit. I say that, you know, sharks outside of the tank. There's Damon and I down at the Atlantis in the Bahamas, and Barbara, we're at a wedding, and Herjavec and I are smoking cigars. And so it reminds me that one day a producer from Dancing with the Stars came over to Shark Tank. And this producer said, hey, look, Dancing with the Stars and Shark Tank are both on the ABC network. We want to do some cross promotion. We'd like to have some sharks on Dancing with the Stars, and that'll help promote Shark Tank. And so, would any of you like to do that? And so right away, Barbara said she wanted to. Herjavec said he wanted to. I said to my wife, what do you think? She said, no way you're going on that show. And I said, well, what's the problem? She said, they dance way too close on that show. Okay? I said, wait a minute, what do you mean? She said, well, let Robert and Barbara do it first, okay? So I said, okay, let's see what happens. So let me show you the clip of Robert from Dancing with the Stars. And by the way, it starts off, it looks like Shark Tank. So watch this. So my wife was right, and there's 2 things. Okay? Number 1, they do dance a little way too close, okay? They also, Robert Herjavec married Kim Johnson, okay? So I know they were a little close on that one, all right? And now they have 2 little kids. So let's give them a round of applause. God bless Robert and Kim Johnson. Yes, that changed Robert's life. He got on that show and just loved it. So Barbara did her thing too, and my wife said, no way you're going on that show. Okay. So anyway, had a lot of fun hanging out with all the sharks. Robert just had his 60th birthday a few months back at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and a big reunion with all of them. So, but I want to talk some serious concepts, entrepreneurial tips, some mistakes that I made, because I've been an entrepreneur now for over 50 years. I started my first business when, I'll tell you the story. There I was 11 years old working in my dad's bars and restaurants, and that was me there. But then my dad was a mentor to me, and when I turned 15, I said, I want to make money, Dad. I'm not making enough money working to pay me $1 an hour. But this was back in the 60s, by the way. So that was still a little low, but I said, how do I make real money? He said, you got to start your own business. So I started a driveway sealing business in high school. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, one of 6 kids. And I'd knock on the doors at night and tell them you got cracks in the driveway there, and when the water gets in there and freezes in the winter, it's going to triple the size of the cracks. Let's seal them and beautify that driveway before. And we were doing 10 jobs a week, a nice little business as a high school kid. But then when I went to college, my dad said, you're the 4th, I'm the 4th of 6, and my 2 older sisters had gone to grade schools, and my brother had gone to college. And then when it came to me, he said, I don't have the money. Business is a little tough in the bar business. You're going to have to pay your own way. So I started a heating and air conditioning contracting business my senior year of high school going into college. And what I had was a very good lead source. And this might apply to many of you here, although I know in home staging, it's prior to the sale, but what I was doing here was I went to the courthouse and got every new homeowner transaction, every new real estate sale. And we contacted those people and said, hey, congratulations on buying your house. Of course, we knew what? They had good credit, they just bought a house, probably some cash, probably looking to fix it up. We'd get in there, we'd see an old furnace, been there 40 years, inefficient, show them how we had these new spark ignition furnaces, 10 furnaces a week, air conditioning systems while I was going to school. By the time I got to my first year in business, and this was back in 1977, we did $1 million in sales in 1 year, and I was 18 years old. And so, thank you. And it was just because I put a plan together. Those are not so okay. So I put a plan together to make that work, because if we didn't have enough leads, I go to college, I get to the office at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, finish up the day, run the leads at night, make the sales, and then my installers, we had 6 of these trucks going out every single day. So but if I didn't have enough sales, I would just get more leads, get more appointments, get more sales, and build more business, have more success. So that was a lot of fun, but just because you start a business, I mean, when I talk to young entrepreneurs today, and I go to schools, I go to colleges, I'm on the board at the University of Tampa for 5 years, and now I'm getting involved with I've been at Auburn for a number of years doing, we call it at Auburn, they call it the Tiger Pitch. It's like Shark Tank. We get the college students to give us pitches, and we invest in their ideas. So when I talk to young entrepreneurs today, they say, well, what is, driveway sealing and heating and air conditioning, right? It seemed like old businesses. Well, of course, this was 50 years ago almost. So today, it's more hip stuff, like digital marketing businesses and launching products on the internet and things like that. It's so much easier today. You can do crowdfunding. I couldn't get money when I was a kid I had to go out and make the money to build my business. So yes, today it's an easier way to go, but it's still tough. And so one of the things that I say that's very important is you have to love what you do. And for me, I got a phone call from, I was installing a lot of furnaces and air conditioning systems, and one day I got a phone call from a friend who we were in the process of installing their furnace, and she called and said, Kevin, you have to get out here right now. And I said, what's the problem? She said, I can't tell you over the phone. You're 10 minutes away. Get over here. I'll show you. And I walk over. I drive over to the house, go down into the basement where the furnace is, and my installer is snoring up against the furnace with a bottle of Jim Beam next to him, open, okay? And I said, okay, I got it. I see what the problem is. The problem was, it was an industry that I was having a tough time managing. I couldn't get good installers. I had to fire that guy, but he was one of our top guys, and it was very difficult. So I finally said, for every 10 furnaces and air conditioning systems we installed, we'd get 20 or 30% problems, and it was way too much. And I just said, I don't want to be a halfway guy in a business. We're doing a lot of sales. Let me sell the business. So I told one of my top guys inside, I said, look, I love parts of this business, but I'm just going to have to move it out. I'm too scattered. I'm a young guy. I'm going to pick something else, but I'm going to sell this company. So if you know anybody, I'm going to go talk to a business broker and let me know if you know anybody that might be interested. He says, Kevin, he said, I've been working here for 2 years now. I'd love to see if I can make this happen. Let me talk to my parents and see if they might be interested in loaning me some money. So make a long story short, I went and sat with a business broker. Now, how many have ever talked to a business broker before? And they sell businesses, right? They're like a real estate broker, but they sell pizza parlors, delicatessens, flower shops, etc. So I went, sat with a broker. He had 200 businesses for sale. All these laundromats, cash business, flower shop, manufacturing, import, export, restaurants. Didn't want a restaurant. I knew that business. But the bottom line is, I'm like, wow, wait a minute. I think this is what I want to do, actually, because he had 200 businesses, and what did he have? The books and the records, the financial statements, the leases, all the cost of goods, the percentages, where they were making money, where they were losing money, and if they had a mall lease, what was the mall charging, and what kind of leasehold improvements would they give? I got an education just listening to this broker, and then sold the business to my employee. He rocked it and did well. And then I started my own business brokerage business to be able, because I left out one step. I had to drop out of college in the meantime because I had 25 employees, 6 trucks going out every day. By the time I get to the office at 3 o'clock, too many times hell had broken loose, right? So I dropped out of school, continued to build the business, and now I said, this is an education for me, business brokerage. So I took it one step further. I said, we're going to sell you a business. And in the beginning, that's all we did. We just sold you the business. And then people would say, but okay, I need an accountant. Do you have anyone you recommend? I said, yeah, this guy's great for small business. How about insurance? I've got, I got to get that taken care of. Call this guy. Well, I need, someone to do our ads and jingles and menus, and call this guy. So all of a sudden, I'm referring all these business brokerage deals out to all these different suppliers who are making money and doing well. And I said, no, I'm bringing it all in-house. And that's what we did. I launched the Small Business Center, a one-stop center. This is in 1980 in Cincinnati, Ohio, 44 years ago. And this was a one-stop center. I rented space to lawyers and accountants and 8 advertising agencies, jingle guys, radio guys. We had this huge whole floor of an office building in downtown Cincinnati. And we would sell you the business. We could incorporate you, do your insurance, your accounting, your graphics, your ads, everything, all under one roof. And of course, Entrepreneur Magazine heard about this. They put me on the cover back in the early, mid-'80s and said, I went out to Los Angeles. This is in downtown LA, Avenue of the Stars. And while I'm there, the publisher of the magazine said, Kevin, you are helping entrepreneurs, this small business center. We love it. We love this idea. Let's do this together. And we did. And we formed a joint venture, myself, with Entrepreneur Magazine. And we opened 30 of these all around the country back in the early to mid-'80s, late '80s, etc. And these were entrepreneur startup business centers. And it was awesome. We had provided on a nationwide basis all the services to help small businesses get up and running. And this is when I would sometimes start investing money and taking some equity and helping some of these businesses. So this was the early days of me. When I said to Mark Burnett, I've been a shark for 40 years, because this is what I was doing before Shark Tank. But so I had a lot of fun. And the reason I did this is because I wanted to use business brokerage as an opportunity to really find out what I wanted to do eventually, right? I said, I'm going to see the trends of the industries, right? Like, hey, I'm not going to own a driveway ceiling business for the rest of my life. I'm not going to be a heating and air conditioning guy, probably not a labor-oriented business. I want to have something that can go global and be very successful. So I would go to a lot of trade shows, and I would go to the houseware show. I think I mentioned the hardware show, the golf show. We found golf products, and we found fitness products, and Tony Little. And so one day, I ordered cable television for my house. And how many remember television before cable? Do we have, okay, we got one, okay, about a third of the room. We got some gray hairs in here, okay? So for those today that didn't see that, we only had 4 or 5 channels. And there was not a lot of opportunity to watch television. I mean, today, hundreds of channels, but in the very beginning, when cable first hit, 30 channels is what I got. ESPN, 24 hours of sports. CNN, 24 hours of news. MTV Music, HBO, movies. I get to channel 30, and this was what I saw. This was the Discovery Channel in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1982. And so I called the cable company and I said, hey, I'm calling to complain, but it's hard to complain about how great this cable is, because I love ESPN and I love MTV and all these channels, but there's just these bars up on channel 30. What is it? What's Discovery? I don't even get anything there. They said, oh, you tuned in during Discovery's downtime. I said, what do you mean downtime? They said, it's an 18-hour-a-day channel. They don't have a budget for 24 hours. The 6 hours a day is that. Now, did anybody say there may be an opportunity there? Okay. Well, when I'm talking to these folks there at Warner Cable in Cincinnati, Ohio, 42 years ago, I said, you got 6 hours of nothing? I want to come down and talk to you because I'm going to fill those 6 hours. And I did. And so it was just an unbelievable experience how it all came together, because right after this, I was at the Philadelphia Home Show and always keeping my eyes open for the next trends, the next things going on. And what did I see? I saw this guy had a booth, and there was a huge crowd around the booth. He had a knife in his hand, and he's cutting through a Coca-Cola can, through a muffler, through a pair of sneakers, and he said, it's the Ginsu knife, okay? Now, I watched the pitch, and of course, his name, I got a chance to meet him afterwards, and obviously, he says, the Ginsu knife, it's 1995, but for the first 10 people, I'm going to give you absolutely free a second knife. But wait, there's more. 6 3-steak knives, a paring knife, a bread knife, 10 knives for 1995, right? So I bought the knife set, and I'm like, that was great, I loved it. But then, right, I'm listening to this guy. He does it again. The same exact words came out of his mouth. I'm listening to this guy, and I'm thinking, wow, wait a minute. This is an unbelievable pitch. And I listened a third time, same exact words, the same cadence, the same jokes. I said, this guy's been doing this for a long time. So he finally got on break, and I went up to him, and I said, hey, I'm Kevin Harrington. I'm an entrepreneur. I've got an idea for you. And he said, Kid, he said, I'm busy. I do this 40 weeks a year. He says, I don't have time to mess around. I got to get another crowd together and pitch this thing again. I'm like, no, that's exactly the point. I have my idea is that you don't have to travel anymore 40 weeks a year. I want to film this one time and put it up on Discovery Channel. And he said, what's Discovery Channel? And I said, it's a new channel that's only 18 hours a day, and I'm going to fill the other 6 hours. And so he said, Kid, he said, wait a minute. You're telling me you film this once, instead of me seeing 10 people at a time, you're going to put it in front of millions? I said, that's it. He said, let's go. We shook hands, and boom. And here's the first video that we shot.
You take a tomato, the weight of the knife alone cuts that tomato. Let me ask you something. How many knives you have at home this sharp you could drop the tomato on top? Pretty sharp, right? You know what one young lady said? Can you cut them thin? I said, thin? One tomato will last you all week long.
How many have seen that kind of pitch, Arnold, before? This guy, Arnold Morris, God bless him, his wife called me about 2 years ago, and Arnold made millions and millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, because not only did he make money on the Ginsu, but he said, Kevin, he said, I know every pitchman in the business. You're a great guy. If I introduce you to them, will you give me a little cut of the action? I said, absolutely. We shook hands, we signed a deal. He brought me Billy Mays, Sandy Mason, this one, that one, billions of dollars. And so Arnold's wife called me 2 years ago and said, Kevin, Arnold, he had a stroke, couldn't talk well. He was bad, he was on his last leg. And she said, he has to talk to you. And I said, oh my goodness. I said, I had heard that he wasn't doing well, and so I get on the phone with Arnold, and he says, Kevin, he says, I got one more pitch for you, okay? And he died a couple days later, God bless him, but it was just an unbelievable guy. This show, Arnold, this one product went on to become such a huge success, over $500 million on a global basis all over the world. Let's give Arnold a round of applause for creating an awesome industry. But it got even more interesting because we had Arnold in the Ginsu in the United States in English. And then we had Tony Little in fitness in English. And we had all these infomercials, Billy Mays and all these kitchen shows, Jack LaLanne and the Juicer, George Foreman. And well, one day I said, well, wait a minute, what other industries can I learn from to do some good things with what I'm doing? And I thought, you know, I'm in the television business. How does the television business operate on a global basis? Oh, television and movies, they go to the Cannes Film Festival in France once a year. And that's where they sell. Every television station in the world comes to Cannes, France once a year. I took a booth out in 1990 and said, I've got a library of 100 shows, and I want you to run these in your local market, and every time you run my show, I will pay you a fee. And so this is how if there was downtime in the US, there was downtime everywhere in the world. So this is how we got access to the global distribution. And so people say, but how did you take Tony Little to all those countries? It was very simple. We just dubbed it into the foreign language. So we take one product like Tony, dub it into 25 languages and run it in 125 countries. And this is Tony in Dutch.
Voeten steeuwen. Zie je hoe zijn handen op haar bedrijf heeft? Niet achter je hoofd. Nee, niet achter je hoofd. Zullen zien wat ze aan het doen is. Niet zoals jij, ja? Omhoog komen. Strak maken. Neer. Met spanning omhoog. Dat is het enige wat je hoeft te doen. Ga. Is er iets? Dat is het enige wat je moet doen om de rechterbuikspieren te isoleren. Wat is die grafiek dan? Dat is de grafiek. Die laat je 30 seconden per oefening op het...
So we took 100 infomercials, dubbed them into all these languages, and we were running them all around the world. And then we took the company public on the New York Stock Exchange. It came out at $1, went to $20-some a share, and we had massive growth. And this was all back in the 90s, so it was 30-some years ago. But I say this is way before the internet. We had no internet business really at that time, but we established great relationships with powerful people and distribution channels all around the world. So the bottom line is that, yes, we built this business, but I said I'm going to share some ups and downs and some of the tough stuff too, because so far we've only talked about the successful projects and the good people like Arnold Morris, etc. But we were having some really tough times all of a sudden, and I think everyone can relate to what I'm going to show you now, because here I was, Mr. As Seen on TV. I owned As Seen on TV Inc., AsSeenOnTV.com. We had hundreds of products running in over 100 countries, and what was happening though? Television viewership was plummeting. I mean, we can all sit here now today and know that ratings and the number of viewers on everything today is way it's more than 50% decline now in the last 10 years. And why? You've got the streaming services, you've got the kids come home, they used to watch Nickelodeon, now they're on Facebook and TikTok and all these different places. So all of a sudden, I saw my business starting to tank. In fact, like I said, this was me. I owned As Seen on TV Inc., AsSeenOnTV.com. But just like I mentioned back before, when I was in the TV and air business and I was getting tired of it, I felt like my business was burning to the ground. You know? Has anybody had a day that bad where it burns all the way to the ground? Huh? I mean, yes, okay. Literally. So when that happens, and this is where I want to really kind of focus in on what I did, because I had 500 employees, and we had been very successful, public company, but we were starting to lose money. And now it was starting to be a bell-shaped curve like this, and I did not want to see it go to the bottom. So I say know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and I sold As Seen on TV Inc., AsSeenOnTV.com. I sold all of it and said, now I'm going to do something different. I don't even know what, but I had plenty of capital to do whatever I wanted. And I said, but what do I need? I need some advice. I need some mentors. I need some advisors. And I think this is exactly oftentimes when I get in front of crowds where a lot of people are in their business life, where maybe they need some help, they need a push, they need a pivot, they need some advice from somebody that's been there and done that. So I reached out to a few people, and fortunately, I had some good connections, and I was able to put a deal together to go have Anthony Robbins. He was somebody, he had an infomercial. He knew me. We did business together. I said, Tony, can you help me? He said, yes. And then he said, we got to go down and see Richard Branson down in Necker Island. And then, how many of you have ever heard of Russell Brunson? Oh, not very many. Russell Brunson is the phone guy, right? Click phones. And Russell Brunson has built $1 billion business from zero. So here I was down at Necker Island, hanging out with Richard Branson, getting some great advice. And what I didn't realize is at this point, I was going down there. Yes, I wanted advice. And I thought, I built companies that went to $500, $600 million in sales, $500, $600 million in value. I've sold this company, sold that company, sold a lot of businesses over the years. And so I was pretty proud of myself when I got down there. But Richard Branson said, Kevin, he said, I know you're here for some advice and we're going to sit one-on-one. He said, but I got to tell you, you've really screwed up. And I'm like, what? I said, well, I thought this was going to be more positive. Come on, what do you mean? He said, oh, I've seen all those as seen on TV things. He said, but guess what? Let me ask you a question. When you did that show with Tony Little and you went to the fitness trade shows with Tony Little, what would happen? And they said, oh, we'd go walking down the aisle and everybody's running to Tony. Tony, I got a new product. I got a new thing. Will you meet with me, Tony? And Tony would be embarrassed. He'd be like, hey, no, Kevin was the guy that did all this. You should talk to him. But that's only when I was with him. When I wasn't with him, he'd take those leads and run with them, right? But what I was hearing Richard say is I never built my brand. I built Tony's brand, Billy Mays' brand, all these other brands, but never worked on my own brand. And he was dead right, because yes, I always had to go out, kind of find the next new home run product, because nobody knew who I was. I was the guy behind the scenes. So what I learned from Richard, and I put a business plan together in my head, and then when I got home, I wrote it down. But it basically was, I had to go out and raise my profile, create a branding on myself, and we came up with the idea that the first thing that I would do was I would go home and write a book, because Richard Branson was very prolific with books and events and hot air balloon rides and all kinds of crazy stuff that he would do, and he would get all kinds of publicity. He's on TV, he's here, he's there. And so I said, I got it. I'm going to go back, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to start working on building my brand, and I want to trade my brand for equity. Think about that. So how many here have somewhat of a brand you're developing? Do we have a few? Right? Awesome. That's great. So you're building your brand, you're getting some traction. Now, I'm going to tell you, I started with a business plan on how to get a strong brand to attract and retain more clients. Become the expert. What are you known for? What is your secret sauce, right? And so this was the first step for me. So I wrote the first book, and the first book was called, here it is right here, How I Turn Ideas into $1 Million Products, Act Now. And so I started doing radio talk shows, because the publisher said, look, we're gonna put a PR person on there, and we're gonna get you on radio. So I got on a show in Chicago, Mancow, one of the biggest guys up in Chicago. It was huge. Then everybody wanted to have me, and I was on 25, then 50, then 100 radio talk shows. This was before, because this is a few years back, this is before podcasting had become very popular. And so I'm on all these radio shows, but now radio is branding me, and then newspapers would call, and I get some calls from TV stations that wanted to interview me. Newspapers would call about, hey, can we get this guy Kevin on and do an article on him? And then, what have I mentioned a bunch? I went to trade show. I used to just go to the trade shows. Now, they wanted me to speak at the trade shows. And so I was keynoting. I've been to the CES show dozens of times and keynoted 8 or 9 times the CES show, the hardware show, the houseware show. I did the beauty pitch with John Paul DeJorio, who owns Paul Mitchell, right here in Las Vegas a few years ago, taking pitches for the best beauty products. Just did the golf pitch with David Ledbetter, getting the best golf products. And so, yes, I was now upping my game, getting my brand built, speaking on stages, writing books, doing radio shows, etc., etc. And by the way, who was paying attention to all of this at the time? Mark Burnett. I wasn't on Shark Tank yet. This got me the phone call to go on Shark Tank. So that's why I say you build an actionable business plan to raise your profile, to do all these things that I'm talking about. And by the way, you can get even more creative with books because, yeah, I wrote the first book. I had a ghostwriter because I'm not a great writer, but it was my voice that he wrote it. But here's another couple concepts for you on books. How many know the great name of Zig Ziglar? Okay, so Zig was one of my mentors. And when he passed away 8 or 9 years ago, Tom, his son, I said, Tom, Zig wrote 45 books in 50 languages all around the world. He has thousands of hours of content, of videos, of audios, automobile learning, and all kinds of stuff. I said, what are you doing with all of those great assets? And he said, nothing. And I said, well, let's re-release them. So his biggest seller, Secrets of Closing the Sale, revised and updated Zig Ziglar with Kevin Harrington. Now, he had already passed, but was now hitching my brand to Zig Ziglar's brand and creating and relaunching his books and his materials in all the bookstores all around the world. And by the way, when Zig passed away, he had never in his life done a Facebook post because it was not a big thing back then. It had just started. But when he died, they wanted to have a tribute to Zig. So they said, go to Facebook and leave your tribute. 5 million people went to Facebook for Zig Ziglar to leave their tribute. Well, who were the first people we talked to about the new content that we were creating? His 5 million people. And one day we did an open, come to the podcast. We had, and it was a clubhouse type of deal. We had over 500,000 people on the line watching us talk about Zig Ziglar's techniques and the greatest things that he's done. So yes, writing books is awesome. Also, this is another format that I've done with others where I took 31 of North America's leading authorities in the world of financial analysis and financial advice. And they all have a chapter in the book. And they also have a version where me and that person is on the cover if they want. They have a cover, and then we make that a bestseller. And now each one of these 31 people is an author of a international best-selling book, and they get to go on radio shows, talk shows, and all that in their markets that they want to, and I help them do that also. So building brands is important. I've talked about different things like. It all started for me with my first book with radio, but I'm going to even tell you this. I invested in a roofing company back in, it's a Columbus-based company. It has 500 dealers across the country, and I own the Tampa dealership. And we went on radio, and we did, for 1 month, 30 minutes twice a week on a radio talk show, all in. The cost of the media, the cost to record, the cost to air it. For 8 airings, $1,100. That included the recording. And so, people are doing radio shows. It's cheap. It's old media. You can buy it cheap. It's just like, and I'm going to talk about television too, because I don't focus on TV, but TV is way cheaper than it used to be. Why? Because the numbers have plummeted and they got to give it away. I mean, it's crazy how cheap. I can buy a 30-minute slot on a television station in Tampa, Florida. It's 3 million homes. 30 minutes on TV for $300. Okay, and these used to be outrageous prices in the old days when they had a lot more viewers. So So yeah, we do focus on social media also. Obviously, this is something Brandon talks a lot about. Brandon, you talked about social media, so I don't need to get into all of this, but yes, we are doing tons and tons. TikTok. I had no idea that the things that we do would apply on TikTok, but they do. And so, and I mentioned we still do some television. This is my travel agent, Tammy Levent. We went to the NBC station in Tampa, Florida, and she would give away a trip once a month, and then they feature her every week as the travel agent to the station. And so it branded her as the expert, and she built her business. This was, fortunately, it was right before COVID, so she built it, and then COVID changed the whole travel industry for sure. But the bottom line is that media time in local markets can be very, very affordable. So has anyone ever heard of a advertorial type of show in their local market? TV show? Let me see the shows. Anybody at all? Okay. So this show, Daytime, is on NBC in Tampa, Florida. You buy a 4-minute slot on that show, and you get interviewed, and it can be anywhere from $0 to $1,000 for the cost to do that. Okay. $0 if you've got something that they want their viewers to hear. If you're selling something hardcore, they're going to charge you, maybe $800 or $1,000 to do it. But this positions you as the guru and the leader in your industry. So if there's anybody here that would like to follow up on this 4-minute kind of time slot things in the local markets, in Tampa, there's all three stations do this. 1 hour every day, they do this advertorial format. Plastic surgeons come on with their newest procedures, car dealers bring their new cars, digital marketers, people with books, etc. But home staging would be awesome there because you have magical transformation, and that's what they love. So anyway, I'm getting down to the last few things that I want to focus on here, because I mentioned podcasting. How many have been on a podcast? Most of you have, hopefully. Yes. Okay. How many do their own podcast? That's the real question. Oh, just 1, 2, 3. Okay. It should be next year. I'd like to see that double. Okay. Because let me tell you, when you do your own podcast, this is what happens. So I went on my book that is called Mentor to Millions. It was my last book that I came out with. My publisher said, we're going to give you an advance and do this book with you if you promise to do one thing. And I said, what? They said, will you do 100 podcasts? And I said, absolutely, no problem. I'm going to promote my book. I'll do it. But I said, but who's the #1 podcast in America right now? And this is before Joe Rogan, because this is back about 4 or 5 years ago. And they said, Adam Carolla is the #1 podcast. He's the love doctor. He's got tens of millions of downloads. And so I said, great. So right in front of the publisher, I shot a video. And I said, this is how I'm going to get my podcast out. I said, hey, Adam Carolla, it's Kevin Harrington here, original shark from Shark Tank. I've got a new book on mentoring, and I'll bet you've have mentored a lot of people in your time. You've probably had some great mentors. I certainly have, and I got a lot of stories to tell. I'd love to come on your podcast, share those stories. Let's have some fun. Get back to me if you have any interest. 2 hours later, he booked me, and I was so excited. And so I said to Adam Carolla when we were taping, I said, there's only one thing. I'm going to do 100 of these. They all have to air the week that the book launches. And that's like 8 weeks from now. And he said, Kevin, he said, I can't do that. He said, I need the content for next week. This is airing next week. I'm not holding it until then. He said, but I'm going to do you one better. We're going to do another one live the week that your book airs into tens of millions of people. So I said, awesome. So I got the 100 done, and it was pretty much a breeze. Some of them were 15 minutes, some were 30, but very few went 60 or 90 minutes because you can get tied up doing too much of that if you're not careful. But the bottom line is, the publisher came back and said, hey, can you do another 100? And I said, well, I said, I know I benefit if I do. I'll do the best I can. I got 185 podcasts done for the launch of that book, and it rocketed day one to number 2 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. And so, yes, thank you. You know, if you're going to write a book, make it successful, right? Get out there and promote it. And there is a whole strategy of launching books, of getting connections, and we would utilize various groups of people that influencers, right? And so, in fact, the gentleman that we, Tarek, what's his name? Tarek. Okay, Tarek. He's coming out with a new book right now. He called me and said, Kevin, I need a quote on the back of the book. He said, I'd love for you to be one of my quotes. He said, but I have to send you the galley. I'll send it to you, and please consider writing a quote for me. Now, why does he want me to write a quote? Because he knows if I'm there, I'm going to send his book information out to all of the followers that I have, because it's something that I'm involved with. So, and when I did my podcasts, I required Adam Carollas of the world to send that podcast out to all of the people that were following them also, right? So this is how we created all of this activity. And again, podcasting was very, very successful for us in raising the profile, and it got me again on more stages and helped take me to this level of becoming a key person of influence. And this is what I want to close on today, because everyone here, a lot of you said you're starting to get a brand going, and that's awesome. Are you the key person of influence? Do people call you before they call somebody else? And how can you make that happen? You've got to have a good pitch. We can help you create a pitch. You've got to publish. You've got to get some credibility. You productize yourself. You've got to raise your profile, become known in the industry. Also, there's one last thought I'm going to share with you, because I talked about trading your brand for equity. You've got to create some great partnerships and build an awesome dream team of people around you. So it's a 7-step formula that I used. I wrote the book on it, and I'm going to share some details with you on that in just a second. But these 7 steps are what I have followed for the last 10 years that have gotten me on Shark Tank and gotten a lot of, just how did I get the PGA show just recently on the floor with David Ledbetter and all that kind of stuff. I continue to raise my profile and build my brand. But this is another thing you can do. How many, Amy has a group here. You have your own association, right? Well, I started a few associations. One of them, how many have ever heard of EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization? Oh, just a couple of them. Wow. It's the largest in the world. We're in 150 cities, 55 countries. We have tens of thousands of members. And Michael Dell was one of the founders, Ted Leonsis, myself. 1987, we formed. It was just a little thing way back. Now it's the world's largest entrepreneurial organization. There isn't a month that goes by that I don't get inquiries from someone in the world looking for help. So think about that. And congratulations on creating the Iahsp, right? Did you guys do that?
I'm just the president.
Jenny, too, right. I'm sorry. Amy and Jenny. Right. So you guys created an awesome organization, and that is why everybody's coming here to hang out. So, and this goes right along with what I was saying earlier, also advisory board partnerships. Most of you have some skill sets, and the most crazy story of anything that I've said so far is coming up here in just a minute, because I decided 10 years ago when I sold all those businesses, As Seen on TV, As Seen on TV Inc., and AsSeenOnTV.com, I said, I know that I want to join boards. And the very first, this is the second board that I joined, and this is Bo Jackson. And Bo Jackson is an unbelievable sports athlete. He's considered one of the greatest athletes of all time. He played professional baseball, professional football. And so Bo had assembled what he considered this awesome dream team. This gentleman here ran Ross Perot's company. Larry was the president of NBC. Pete Brown was a huge executive. Now, here's some more guys. Take a look at this one down here. Mark Davis, owner of the Oakland Raiders, right? So when you join a board, when you join an advisory board, you're on the board with some other pretty powerful people. And let me tell you what starts happening. Yes, we're all advising Bo, but now I'm involved with 2 deals with Larry, who used to run NBC, because he's like, Kevin, you've got such a skill set of digital marketing that many people don't have. Can you help me out on another couple of projects? So this is a powerful, powerful thing. Joining advisory boards, you get a little piece of equity in the business, and sometimes it's even a little bigger piece of equity. In fact, this is a company that I want to tell you about. How many have heard of the energy drink Celsius? See a show of hands. A lot of people, right? Okay. 10 years ago, nobody knew it because the product barely existed. It was a startup, and I'm one of the 5 founders as a board member of Celsius. The stock was 10 cents a share all the way back here, and it started getting a run, and all of a sudden it had topped $3.65. 36 times it had grown. 3,600% growth to get to that point. Let me set this up. So when I got involved with Celsius, I said, look, we're not going to put this on TV. This is not an as seen on TV kind of thing. We have to use influencers. And this is 10 years ago, before people were really even doing it, right? And they said, what do you mean influencers? I said, I've got a connection to Flo Rida. He's a friend of a friend. I'm going to go down and see him, and I'm going to see if I can get him to endorse Celsius. And they said, awesome. He's got 26 million followers. And Flo, I went down, met with him, and wow, he said, this is awesome. I want to do it. I'm going to shoot video after video after video. And here's the first one.
Healthy energy and it's clinically proven to burn 100 calories or more in every serving.
So when I joined Celsius, they had millions of shares for advisors. I got a lot of stock on the front end of joining Celsius. And again, it was 10 cents when I got there. 5 of us that started this on the board. We went to $3.65. We went to $9.80. And then it took off. $165 a share, $12 billion company we created from zero. And it all happened. Hey, thank you. All right. I don't take all the credit. We had 5 really good guys there, and the CEO of the company, Jerry David, was awesome and just focused on building that business. So, at 100, and by the way, if you see the stock, it just did a 3-for-1 split, so it's 50 something now. So don't think it went from 165 to 50 something. It's still a $12 billion business, and I had the good news. I had a 10-year contract that expired last year, and I was able to sell my stock, and I still have stock, but I ended up taking some chips off the table. And the chairman of the company had 20 million shares. And do the math, times $165, that's 3-point-something billion dollars. He came out of it just to be the chairman, right? So this all came about just joining a board. And that is the power of your brand. And I want to say that if you're interested in doing this, you need to get, and it's free, doesn't cost you a dime, go get the digital copy of The Key Person of Influence. Read it. I actually, I had a co-writer with this one also. And sometimes when you're putting something together, you don't know how it's going to turn out, but when we finished it and we read it, we said, wow, this is good. So we like this content. And I just want to say that I feel very excited to be here. I'm going to be taking a few questions in a little bit, hanging out for some time here afterwards also. But I just have my last closing thought is that, here's a guy that I used to give millions of dollars to every year, Rupert Murdoch, the founder of Fox. Now, he doesn't look so happy there, does he? He's like, why is Rupert so, he's kind of a miserable dude at times, right? And so he's, well, why? Because TV viewership was plummeting. He had to sell Fox. He spent his whole life building it, and he had to sell it. Who'd he sell it to? He sold it to Disney, and then Disney was $160 a share. It tanked to $80. It's now 90. I mean, it's like TV, no thanks. That's the old way. It's a few channels that broadcast to millions. The new way is what we do, what Brandon does, millions of channels broadcasting to a few. And that is the power of digital marketing, building your brand, and utilizing all the different aspects of podcasting and all the things we've talked about here today. So I have 4 last words that I'm going to have my buddy Tony Little deliver, because there's some people that when I talk about how many have their own podcast, very few hands raised, but I say, this is what you should be doing. So, I mean, I'm hoping that some of you can think about what we're talking about here and take some steps to go and take your brand to the next level. I mean, over half of you said you've got a brand that is starting, building, maybe already there, but if you're concerned, if you don't know if you can or you can't, I've got 4 words of wisdom from my buddy Tony Little. If you're on the fence, listen to Tony Little, and these are his wisdom words. You can do it! You can do it! You can do it! You can do it! Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask Kevin a new question. Are you okay with that?
I am. I had my cataracts out this week, so these are my glasses that I have to wear. They're very strange looking, but I'm sorry. So
You really can't, no matter what. Don't worry about that. So I have you're right.
Yes.
So what are some of the biggest hits you had on Shark Tank?
Oh, hey. So Shark Tank, I had hits and I had failures, okay? And so Scrub Daddy was one that was a big success. And that's done hundreds of millions of dollars. There was another one, what's that?
We love Scrub Daddy. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But one of the craziest ones was a product called City Kitty. It was a cat toilet training product, okay? And so it taught the cat how to jump on the toilet, go to the bathroom, and jump off. They used that on the movie Meet the Fockers, by the way. Robert De Niro had the cat jump up. City Kitty did tens of millions of dollars. I mean, of a cat toilet training product, right? But we had some cool things, but I always have to say, one person, I had invested $500,000 for 50% of their company and got them on Home Shopping Network, did all these things for them, and 6 months later, they closed the doors and my money was gone. So that was the worst deal that ever happened for me on Shark Tank. So that wasn't so good, but we had some good ones. Yeah.
So right now,
yes.
What are you mainly focusing on today in your business and life?
Yeah, very, very good question. So before COVID, I was doing this kind of event about 150 times a year. And I was on the road 250 days a year, and COVID was a good thing for me because it forced me, I went from being on the road 250 days a year to only being on the road 5 days. And I liked 5 a lot better, okay? Because it really takes a toll on you traveling all over the world. And I was doing from Dubai to India to all over Europe, Latin America, etc. And at Shark Tank, is pretty much everywhere in the world. So I would go to Israel with Israeli sharks, Mexico with the Mexican sharks, and South Africa and Australia with the Australian sharks, and Brazil with the Brazilian sharks, taking pictures and doing fun stuff and all of that. But now I focus, I got a couple of key projects. How many of you have ever heard of a TV show called Wicked Tuna? Yeah. Okay, so I own the rights to Wicked Tuna for every merchandise product that you can consider. Tuna for fish, food. So we're selling tuna to the military, we're selling Wicked Tuna to Sam's Club and Walmart, we're selling Wicked Tuna fishing rods and reels. And so we took that brand, which is 14 years, the #1 Disney TV show on the National Geographic Channel, and now we're launching about 100 products under the Wicked Tuna umbrella.
So basically you're a genius.
No, I just take, thank you, but I mean, I didn't create it, I didn't invent it, and that's what I do is partner, and that's
the dream team.
That's the dream
talking
team.
About.
In 50 some years as an entrepreneur, I have only had one patent, only one product. I lost a ton of money on it because I got too close to it, and I always prefer to partner with other people. So, like Wicked Tuna, they spent 14 years building the brand, and it just took one check to tie up the rights to it, and now start finding the right people to market those products.
And the dream team really is ultimately...
Oh, absolutely. We have an unbelievable dream team there.
And it could be anybody that of influence like you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
So if you were to leave the audience with one last thought or tip, maybe even dream team related, what would that be?
Well, so I would say that you should go for the gusto. I mean, if you are a podcaster, don't be afraid to call Barbara Corcoran or the Sharks or the biggest and the best in the industry, because the worst they can say is no or maybe, and I know that some of these folks will do these kinds of things, and I do also. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to offer this to you and Jenny to pick somebody here if they would like a session with me, a 30-minute session.
I pick me.
Okay. And I'm going to offer it. I'm going to offer it for free, okay? Because I've had such a good time here. So this is what I want you guys to do, is go get that session from somebody else, but I'm doing one free session for somebody for 30 minutes sometime in the near future, okay?
And you said something good. There's some value behind that.
Yes,
What is the value of that? It's a lot. Okay, it's a lot. We'll just try that.
Okay,
so let's keep that real.
Yeah. So you guys figure out how you're going to pick the person that wins that. Okay.
So,
but that's I want to incentivize everybody to go do that. Okay.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And I know
get a mentor. Get the best mentor that you can get, and don't be afraid to go for the biggest and the best. I mean, I'll tell you the crazy little story. I wanted to meet this one businessman, and I tried. I called his assistant, and she was very nice. Just, no, he's not going to talk to you. You're not going to put him through. And so after like the third or fourth time, I said, let me ask you. I said, I'm not going to give up. I said, after work, does he drink anywhere? Does he have a cocktail anywhere? She said, I'm going to give you that, okay? And boy, was I there. Did I happen to oh my goodness, look who I ran into at the bar, okay? And I got a deal done with that guy. So don't be afraid to go for the best, okay? All right.
I thought you were going to make sure that you had a good flight plan.
Well, that too. All right.
I want to thank you so much on behalf of Iahsp. Jenny and I are so grateful. All of you, I'm sure, are so grateful. Please give him one last huge round of applause.